Okay? All right. Excellent. Great. So hello, everybody. So my name is Arkadiy Shapiro. I'm Product Line Manager at Barefoot Networks. So today for the next 10 minutes, we're going to talk about SONiC deployments that are powered by Programmable Dataplane and a little bit about our experiences running SONiC, deploying it, testing it with customers, some of the things that we found, how we addressed some of the challenges that we faced there. Okay. I think it's my first time presenting at OCP, so very excited about that. So let's dive in. Quick recap for those of you who are not familiar with Dataplane programmability, because sometimes there's a lot of confusion about programmability in general, right? Dataplane programmability is essentially about software telling the switch what to do, right? Not just writing some agents, not writing some scripts, but really software reprogramming the switch data plane to make sure the switch tells or does exactly what you want it to do. Okay? And maybe that's not a surprise. Barefoot really believes that the switch has to be 100% programmable. Right? So we're going to talk about that, and some of the use cases are really based on this idea that the entire pipeline of the switch is 100% programmable. Okay? Now, speaking about SONiC, quick background, I think Dave touched on this quite a bit. SONiC's been growing leaps and bounds, lots of new contributors, and we're happy to participate in it and support some of our customers with it. But one challenge I would say we found is that the original focus really was on fixed function chips. And when we started working on SONiC, we were trying to figure out, so how can we make it work with a programmable chip, right? How can we make sure that we can have SONiC working with different P4 programs that are essentially defining the entire data plane of the chip, right? So this is what I'm going to talk about in the remaining slides. The structure of our software development environment, so we're a programmable ASIC company. We have lots of other software solutions, including the monitoring system for the telemetry called Deep Insight, which is on the show floor that's being demoed. But the core software, which I'm responsible for, is the Barefoot software development environment. And the structure of the Barefoot software development environment, SONiC basically sitting on top and calling the SI APIs. Right? So every chip vendor implements the SI APIs that are needed for SONiC features to work. So do we. Right? But we do it slightly differently, which some details I'll cover later. Okay? In terms of the P4 program, right? So how do we define the data plane for SONiC? We're using a reference P4 program that Barefoot has developed. And we're essentially enabling the features that are really needed for SONiC, right? So unlike a typical switch that would support a lot of features, SONiC is a very streamlined kind of set of functionality that is really focusing on what the community needs, right? So originally started with things that Microsoft needs. Now there's more community members, as Dave talked about, adding more and more features, right? And we're adjusting our P4 program to support those features as well, right? But the key thing here is that our P4 program in this case can be very light and very streamlined, that is pushed down to the hardware, and the SI APIs are leveraging this P4 program and configuring this P4 tables. Okay? Quick recap, right? So if you look at our reference P4 program, it's supporting a bunch of features. However, as I said, right, SONiC really does not need all of those things. So in bold, I've highlighted some things that we've really enabled for SONiC. When we disable other features, essentially they're not taking up space on the chip. They're not using up the data plane. We're free to do things like perhaps scale up our IPv4 tables or scale up our tunnel tables to perhaps serve a bigger requirement that a customer may have. Okay. Now, how we've actually deployed this, right? I talked about kind of the initial challenge of working or doing SONiC with a programmable switch. The first thing that we've done is essentially having, as I said, different profiles on the P4 program, the reference P4 program that we have. But when you download a SONiC image, as you'll see, there's a tie-in of a SONiC image to a particular ASIC, right? So how can you make sure that the ASIC actually supports multiple P4 programs? So the way at least that we're doing it today, and this is probably some work that the community has to engage in, is first, either we just deploy different SONiC images. Now, on the community side, what we've upstreamed, it's one profile, one P4 program, one type of image, right? So when we work with customers directly, we can offer them different SONiC images, but really it's coming from us, right? And the other way is that we've had a procedure where we can actually take a running SONiC image and just replace the ASIC-specific functions, the compiled SDE, with a different binary, right? And essentially we reload the image and have it run a different P4 program, okay? So these are the things that we've done today. Again, some area where, in our belief, there has to be some work in the community to make it maybe a little bit better and more streamlined. And I know there's kind of some work is going on in this regard. Okay? And again, I talked a little bit about this idea of a profile, but essentially for us, it's defining the features that are enabled or disabled, and also defining the size of the tables, right? So when I go and disable particular features that SONiC really doesn't need, because SONiC hasn't even implemented that feature, we are free to scale up the features that we're actually using, right? Quick note on how we're delivering this to customers. As I said, we have completed the upstreaming for SONiC. So actually, there's some supported Tofino-based platforms on the SONiC page, and there was a press release, I think, on Tuesday morning that reflects that. So the first thing when somebody is trying to get started on a Tofino-based platform, they just go to the SONiC page, they download the image, they can get going, right? But that is, as I said, one P4 program, one image, essentially supporting what SONiC supports today. If a customer wants to do something different, they want to change the tables, either they get a complete binary file from us, or they grab our software development environment. Of course, they would need to have a SLA with us for that. And they can go and change the P4 program, recompile the SDE, and then compile SONiC together with that. Right? So these are some of the options. Right? There's basically a way to, quickest way to get started, which is listed there in bold. And there's some other, I would say, more advanced ways customers are getting savvy, and they're trying to do more interesting things with SONiC. Okay? So I mentioned this already. So we announced full SONiC support with a couple of our Whitebox partners, EdgeCore and WNC. This doesn't mean that there are other Whitebox systems that don't, or Tofino-based Whitebox systems that don't support SONiC, but they're obviously in the works in terms of getting the platform code upstreamed and available on the SONiC page. Right? But these are the two that I would say most broadly available today. Okay? Things like community test validations that are really, SONiC is making sure that the features there of a quality. We've done that in conjunction with our partners. So great milestone for us to hit this week. Okay. In terms of use cases, well, why do we need this programmability? I would mention two things. The first one is scaling the table sizes. SONiC today does not prescribe in terms of how the tables should be. Different customer requirements are different. So for example, a customer may be more V4 heavy or maybe V6 heavy, right? SONiC supports IPv4, IPv6, but as the community grows, as the number of deployments grow, some folks are really V6 centric and some are not quite, and they have their own kind of choices and reasons for that. So with that, when we go and create those different profiles and compile different SONiC images, we basically can say that, look, let us compile something for a V4 heavy deployment, let us compile something for a V6 heavy deployment. Maybe we'll have something that is focused more on host routes versus the longest prefix match, or vice versa, right? So those are some of the things that we've seen with customers, or being able to help them with a fully programmable data plane. And the second use case that Dennis touched on is the Dataplane Telemetry. So Barefoot chips support pretty advanced in-band network telemetry with things like advanced triggers and deduplication of the data that's being sent to the cluster. So definitely, right, making sure that the server cluster that's monitoring this in-band network telemetry is used as efficiently as possible, so that you don't need to have a lot of servers, right? And supporting features like path and latency tracking, microburst detection, things like that. So we've done some deployments where all the SONiC switches were running there, and there's actually a demo on the show floor that's doing in-band network telemetry with SONiC based on the SI APIs that we've contributed to configure the Dataplane Telemetry. Okay? So speaking of those APIs were in the SI master. I believe they're on SI 1.3 now. So the next SONiC release after March, I was told that will be based off SI 1.3. And the SI APIs essentially define the little configuration that we need that's not very config heavy, the little configuration that we need to configure Dataplane Telemetry, right? And then on top of the SI APIs, we're contributing some functionality in SONiC to essentially configure this at a higher level, right? And that functionality is, right now we're working on it. We're demoing it on the show floor, pending some community discussions. So we're hoping to upstream it in the future release, right? So that would be a great kind of contribution from Barefoot to the SONiC community to make the deployment of the telemetry, deployment of the in-band network telemetry much easier. Okay? And that's all I have for today.
All right, we can take a few quick questions. Maddie, why don't you come up and get set up while we take those questions? Yes.
So my question is related to psi and p for runtime, which is coming up, being defined, right? So
Sure.
how do you, how do you layer them? Is it psi, there's one way to implement would be that psi can be written as a layer above p for runtime. So are you planning to do that, or will you be supporting?
That's an excellent question. I think there's very active community discussions that are going on in this area. Right now, as of today, those things are orthogonal. Right? So there's the P4 runtime, and there's the announced Stratum project that you may have heard about, right? And there's SONiC. But obviously, there's some work to be done. I wouldn't comment on any specific details because everybody has different ideas. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.